Cedric Collins, founding attorney, Legacy One Law Firm, your trusted advisor for all things trust and estates. And I'm often asked in my line of work, what exactly happens when someone inherits property? So, mom left property, dad left a property, your grandparents left something. Well, what does that look like from a legal perspective? And also from a transactional perspective, right? And today we have a special guest that's going to go over some of the details. And we're going to kind of pull back the curtain just a little bit to find out, but what exactly happens once one inherits property? And today we've got a special treat. I'm delighted to have with us Ms. Tyler King, who is the broker of record at Acacia West Realty, a Los Angeles native and your trusted realtor for all complex real estate matters. She has over 8 years of dedicated experience in the real estate industry. Tyler has cultivated a unique set of skills navigating the intricacies of probate and trust estates, representing investors, buyers, and sellers in all that comes with the unique and often challenging transactions. Tyler is committed to providing top-notch service that extends beyond the traditional real estate realm. She is not merely a realtor, but a reliable guide, assisting her clients with compassion, patience, and data-driven market knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to some and introduce to others, Miss Tyler King.
Hi, Cedric. Thank you for that introduction. I definitely love helping my clients navigate these types of problems, and it's an honor to be on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, because this is a very it could be a complex topic. You know, when I'm putting together these estate plans, a lot of times I get phone calls from folks, parents or someone just died, and now they have this property on their hands. And now, where do they start? Where do they begin? So, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to try to unveil, kind of uncover some of the mysteries here, right? And kind of add some clarity to folks who are in this particular situation. So, I think a good question to start off here is, what are some of the common problems that you encounter when going to sell a property that may be going through a probate sale or what have you?
The most common that I see is the person interested in selling doesn't have the authority because the property belongs to the deceased relative, and they're unaware that if if the title is held in an individual's name or not in a trust, that property has to go through probate. So usually that's the number one thing. The person interested in selling doesn't have the authority to do so. Liens that they were unaware of that the deceased relative has on their title when we do a preliminary title report, that's a big problem. And the property being in a trust and the person interested in selling isn't the successor trustee. So that is also a common thing. Another common thing is they think because their deceased relative had a will that will keep them out of probate court, or that means that they have the automatic authority to do so. And unfortunately, in California, that's not how it works. You need a trust. Trust is the only way to keep you out of a probate situation.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, we find that folks have a trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they still end up in probate, right? And so what I
Right.
often say, hey, just because, your parents or grandparents had great intentions and they just have to document, but a lot of times folks are forgetting critical steps, it sounds like, to get this taken care of. So just having a trust by itself, if it's improperly done, I imagine that's an issue, right?
Right. Yes. I've come across plenty of trusts that were improperly written, or an aunt or an uncle, maybe was a paralegal somewhere, and they thought they had the skill to do it. And like you said, they have great intentions, but you don't know what you don't know until it's time to go sell a property, and you think, well, we have a trust, and um, you know, that's supposed to keep us out of probate if it's not done correctly. Or let's say you have a trust and it is done correctly, but you take it out of the trust to refinance a property because you can't refinance with the property being held in a trust, and you forget to put it back in there. Unfortunately, you still have to go through probate court. Now, there's something called a Hexstat petition that will expedite the probate, so it won't take as long as a normal probate, because they'll see, the judge will see, okay, you have a trust, your intention was to put it in there and keep it in there. Unfortunately, something happened to you before you were able to, or you forgot. So that's a workaround for that. But yeah, if it's not properly written, unfortunately, that still means you have to go to probate court, which
So it sounds like to me, Ty, that nothing's automatic, right? You know,
right.
just because you have something, nothing's automatic. And you know what I see sometimes, oddly enough, what I do, I get the phone calls, and some families have been living in houses for 7, 8, 9, 10 years that is
Mm,
still in the name of the deceased person's, and still in the deceased person's name. Grandma
right.
died 10 years ago, and the family is still living right there in that house. I mean, so do you see that? I mean, so is that a thing that you encounter?
Yes, that's honestly the most common thing. And then that leads me to, like I said, the number one common problem is the person interested in selling, you know, doesn't either have the authority or doesn't know that, just because you've been staying here for 10 years and now you're ready to sell it, and there's no trust there, you can't, you can't do it. So that is really common. People live there for, 5, 10 years, and they keep making the payments, of course, and now it's time to sell it, or they want to move elsewhere, or maybe they even want to do a home equity line of credit on the property to take advantage of the equity, since our market has been so hot here, and they can't do it. They can't do it.
Got it. So it sounds like maybe some of these families either they don't know or maybe they do know, but they're just kind of kicking the can down the road. They're saying, okay, we know one day we're going to have to pay the piper here. We're going to have to like legitimize this thing, right?
Right.
Because I guess the mortgage company, they're happy because maybe they're still getting money. So they're
Right.
not doing anything. And but the whole time, the person who really legally, owned the house has passed away. So so how does someone get started? I guess, and what should they get together first when they want to start maybe working with you?
So if there is a trust, obviously I would need a copy of the trust. The escrow and title need a copy of the trust. Power of attorney, if maybe a relative is incapacitated and they're still living, maybe they haven't passed away. Sometimes we have cases like that need to go to probate even though they're a power of attorney. So we need a power of attorney document or death certificate, the original death certificate, not a copy. And those are generally the top three things that are needed to get started when you're going through a probate case.
Got
Or
it. So
potentially a probate case.
so that makes sense. So there is some documents, some preparation. There's some steps that the person who has the rights to do this. There's some paperwork that that person needs to gather first on the way before they maybe even approach you to try to attempt to sell the property.
Yes, yes. If they have the knowledge, where the trust is or that there is a trust, sometimes properties go to relatives or kids and they never even knew what their parents, how their parents held title or what the trust even says. So sometimes they get to me not even knowing that they need a copy of a certain document. So then I have to tell them, if we have when we get a preliminary title report, that you need this document, you need a trust, you need a death certificate if your relative has passed away, power of attorney, all of those things. So a lot of times they don't even know what they need until they call me. But if they do know that it's a trust, some of them will say, I know my mom had a trust, it's around here somewhere, I'll find it and give you a copy.
Got it. But they got to legitimize this process. There definitely needs some paperwork. There's definitely some paperwork that needs to be gathered, whether it's a trust, power of attorney, death certificates. That's good. And so if they don't have it all together, they can still contact you and know that you can kind of guide them
Absolutely.
through what they'll need. And I think that's important because a lot of times folks just want, someone to kind of be a beacon of light, someone to kind of, kind of pave the way for them, lay things out and just make it plain for them. And it sounds like you have a system in place with your firm to get that taken care of.
Right, definitely. Yeah, we try to make things very simple. They're going through a hard time already, and for us to be there to guide them through that transitional process, we're very passionate about it, and we really want to make sure that we make things as easy for everyone in the transaction as possible.
Got it. Now we keep using the word or the probate. Now, I mean, obviously, being a trust and estates attorney, I know what probate is. My job is to keep my clients out of court and out of conflict, out of court and conflict, right? That being namely out of probate. But for some of our viewers here today, can you kind of explain from your perspective what is probate? What is that? What does that look
Right.
like to somebody?
Simply put, probate is the legal process and where you transfer assets out of an estate. So probate will give someone an authority to, handle those the affairs of that estate. That's the most simple way for me to put it. It's the legal
Got it.
process for you to be able to transfer assets.
Exactly. And so how long do you typically, for what you see in your line of work? I know from on the lawyer side, the legal side, I know, but what do you see? You have these probate sales. I mean, how long might a probate process last from your experience?
That's a great question because a lot of people, as we've spoken about, don't know about the probate process in general. But there's two types of confirmation in a probate case. There's court confirmation, which extends the time that it takes for a property to be sold within the probate process. So typically, court confirmation can be, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on how backed up the courts are, depending on, how long it takes you to get a buyer for the property. So having court confirmation extends the probate process by far. And then there's no court confirmation, which means you can sell the property as you would in a normal transaction, as if there were no probate. So you don't have to have a judge sign off on it. The personal representative of the estate can make the choice, accept an offer. Escrow closes in 14 to 45 days, and it's a normal process.
Got it. So how does one qualify to have something the non-confirmation? Because that's what folks want to know. Like, wait a minute, how do I kind of exclude or shorten this time? And sometimes what do they need to say, hey, I have this now, I don't have to have the judge sign off on it?
That's another great question. Hopefully, the relatives are okay with nominating one person as the personal representative. Things get a little tricky when, a brother and sister are saying, well, I'm supposed to be, the head of the estate, or I'm supposed to be taking care of these affairs. And one person says, no, it's supposed to be me. So when there's conflict within the family, that typically leads to court confirmation. If there's no conflict, or there's only one person involved or named as the personal representative, then there's going to be no court confirmation. So as little conflict as possible will allow the judge to say, I don't need to oversee this.
Got it. And I can imagine for those of us who don't have a plan in place, how much more that's going to extend the time, because now you have that same scenario. I can think of that now, but there's no will, there's no trust involved. And now brother and sister are at odds as who should be in charge.
Right.
I've heard stories about, probate can be, 6 to 24 months. I've heard 3, 4, 5 year probates if there's like complex real estate and fighting and things going on. So yeah, I've heard all types of crazy times out there in terms of how long. So it's not just maybe the stress of having to go through probate from a financial standpoint, but now it could be years, it seems like,
Right.
if there's some
Yeah,
complexities going on.
definitely. I've worked on a case that was 3 years long before, and it's such a terrible process that could easily be avoided, with a little bit of planning ahead and putting your property and your assets into a trust, because it saves not only, the financial stress, as you said before, but just the time, and you're already grieving over losing someone. And, that extends the grieving process. In my opinion, a lot of people don't get a chance to grieve until the probate process is over. And, that's really unfortunate.
Absolutely, because there's when I'm having these counseling sessions with my clients, when we're doing this legacy planning, I say, hey, look, folks, there's the emotional component of the loss of a loved one. And then there's also then the financial aspect, the business part of death, which slaps clients in the face and families in the face very quickly.
Right.
And beyond just getting the final affairs and the final, burial and things of that nature, now there's bills, there's appraisals, there's the probate, there's hiring lawyers, there's hiring professionals such as yourself to help them navigate that, and then someone has to oversee all of that, right? So, and there's usually someone in the family or a couple of people in the family that kind of have to bear that burden. And yeah, you're right. When does that person have time to actually grieve? And so we touched on the monetary part or the time part, but mentioned the monetary part. Like, what have you seen in terms of cost and fees? Like, in terms of if someone wants to hire you, is there a fee involved in addition to any court costs? So how much might it cost to work with you to wrap up the affairs to sell a home?
Right. So we charge anywhere, which is negotiable, but we charge anywhere between 4 to 6%, which is standard. I mean, and sometimes a lot of these probate cases, depending on when their relative has passed away, there's not a lot of money there in general because there's no equity in the home or something like that. But on the legal side, I've seen, bills as low as $3,500, which is great and amazing, but those bills go tens of thousands of dollars easily because there's a formula that the court charges for um, for the probate process. So I'm sure you are aware of that and explain that to your clients, but it gets really expensive outside of just the real estate process.
Absolutely. The real estate is typically, from what we see, Ty, is the largest chunk the largest asset in someone's portfolio or in their estate. But there's other property too that we don't have time to get into. We're just talking about real estate here. But yeah, we
Right.
see 401k, retirement, investment accounts, bank accounts in probate, cars, jewelry. Basically, your estate is anything that you own at the time of your death. I like to say this jokingly to my clients, down to the glasses on your face, right? So yeah, so the house is typically, yes, the major kind of the financial asset, that we see, but that sometimes that house can have it tied up in probate for years. I mean, I have colleagues who are probate attorneys, and there's liens on properties. Sometimes they have to put liens on properties to get paid, so that can really carry out and drag out this process financially. If there's a lien that's been placed on your property judicially, now when you go to sell that house, that debt has to be satisfied during the time of the sale. So either you're going to pay now or kind of pay later with regard
Right. Exactly.
to that. And
Exactly.
so, what about when someone passes away, Ty, and there's a mortgage on the property? Now what happens?
That's a great question because most of the time, as I said earlier, people just move in and keep paying the mortgage, which is fine until you want to maybe borrow against the property because you have some equity. Mom had some equity, or maybe the house needs a little bit of work on it. In those cases, someone who wants to borrow against the property has to be on title to do that, which now you're entering probate because you have to change the title out of mom's name or dad's name or the relative's name into your name to be able to access any type of funds that are tied up in the property. So if you just want to move in and that's going to be your forever home moving forward because it's of sentimental value to you or your family, you can continue to just pay the mortgage until you pay it off. But if you want to access any type of equity, now you're into probate. You have to go to probate because you have to be on title, and you have to be on title for 6 months if you want to borrow against the property. So now you have to go through probate to get on the title, be on title for 6 months, then be able to borrow against the property. And with today's market, your property value, if it's going down, you may not have had the same amount of equity by the time you're done with the probate process and being on title for 6 months. So all of this really shows how important it is to have your property in a trust to protect yourself from things like this.
Absolutely, because now it sounds like a big headache to have this paperwork that needs to be done, the judicial process, having the judge having to sign off on things. So it sounds like it can be a very complicated process, even from that mortgage now just adds another layer, right? Because I mean, maybe this is how we see some of those families who've been in that house for 8 to 10 years. Like we mentioned, they're continuing to pay the bills, but now they're in the financial jam. And now they have a house that can have several $100,000 of equity in it, especially if it was a house that had been around. Grandma owned this house and bought this house since 1950. And now
Right.
she bought it for 50,000 and now it's worth $1 million. How many times do we see that? We see that very often right here in Southern California, right? Now you
Right.
have all this equity that you can't tap into because you're not on the deed, you're not on title.
Right.
Wow.
And then we have to think about as well being able to qualify for that. What if you're not in a position to qualify for that? So now you've been paying your mortgage, building the equity of just paying the mortgage down. Let's say the market doesn't even appreciate, you're paying your mortgage down. That's equity as well. If you can't even qualify to refinance or re-amortize your loan, because it's in your mom's name and not in a trust, that's also a really difficult thing to come to terms with when it's time to do that and you can't.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess that's why it's imperative. Um, that's why I'm such a champion for generational wealth and planning with via a living trust, because basically, you don't have to have that court involvement, and we can do certain things. And I advise my clients on strategies. The parents who are going to be leaving it to the children, how can they inherit this property from you without a mortgage? All right. And so there's certain things that I discuss with my clients. And like, these are the strategies that these are what families are doing to make sure they can pass down this house without the mortgage. And there's certain resources that we can tap into or that you can start using today to make sure that when you pass this house to your kids or to your grandkids, there's no mortgage. And now there's just that extra layer of financial burden that you have to deal with. And sometimes we see where families have to sell the property because now, like you said, they can't qualify for the loan or whatever. Maybe what if someone loses their job or what have you, and now maybe there was a $3,000-4,000 mortgage that they're struggling with. Now, they can't even refinance and get better terms. Now they have to say, okay, now we have to sell this house, but guess what? Mom's name, our parents' names are still on the deed. And so now that just kind of it can really adversely affect the family now because now
Right.
it's like they're being caught off guard. The
Right.
financial situation has changed. They need to make a move, and now probate. And so I can see how that can definitely kind of complicate things for a family. So what else should we know? What else in important? Well, what if they want to keep the property? I think we kind of touched on that. So they just not ever go through the probate process? Hey, they say, hey, we just want to keep this house. We don't want to go through probate ever. We just want to continue to do the make payments. What can they do that?
Well, you can continue to make the payment, but as I said, if you have any long-term goal with the property that includes, removing the equity or selling the property down the line, as you said, people have jobs. What if you relocate? What if something happens in your own personal life that requires you to, you know, dispose of this property? You're gonna have to go through probate at some point. As great as it sounds to be able to keep paying the mortgage, okay, we can just pay the mortgage and we'll pay off the mortgage at some point and you can pay off a property. But when it comes to, okay, now this property is paid off, what can we do with it? Maybe you want to borrow to invest in something else. You can't do that until you go through the probate process.
Got it. So, like I said, you can kick the can down the road as much as you may, right? But at some
Right.
point, you're going to have to like pay the piper. You're going to have to go through this process. There's no way around that, except, folks, with a revocable living trust that's properly funded with the proper disability provisions in it. And when I'm at the speaking engagements, in fact, I talk a lot about this in my book we have coming out. I have coming out here soon about pitfalls and steps that should be taken in order to make sure that they can avoid this probate process. And one more thing that I think is very important that we should take a look at. I mean, why do you think, from your perspective, folks avoid using professionals such as lawyers and real estate folks and try to do it themselves? Why do you think folks try to maybe, I'm going to need to tackle this myself? What have you seen or heard from this?
I think the DIYers definitely have great intentions. Most of the time, it's to save a little bit of money up front. And as I said, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that by saving, a couple thousand, by spending, I'm sorry, by spending a couple $1,000s up front to do a full estate plan, that it's going to save you and your family tens of thousands of dollars down the line. I think people, we're in a day and age where people are empowered to do things on their own. They can figure it out. Information is so vastly available that they think they read an article, they've got it figured out, but there's intricacies in there that, end up coming back to bite their family in the butts after they're gone. So I think
Yeah.
they have good intentions, but I think it's usually, from what I hear, saving money up front and thinking, oh no, I can do that. My cousin is a paralegal; she knows what she's doing, and they put that trust in, someone who means well but doesn't have all the knowledge.
Got it. And so I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I
Right.
think that definitely applies here in this situation to where, hey, look, taking preventative measures and having it done right the first time. Because what I've seen is that once there is a problem, once there's an emergency, it's going to be exponentially more expensive to have that problem solved. Right.
Right.
And so with that in mind, when I'm advising clients, I'm definitely saying, hey, yes, it's going to be an investment today, but we've seen probates well beyond six figures.
Right.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a couple life insurance policies, if you have a 401k here or there, a property or two, that all that those assets end up in probate, it's very easily the probate bill can be well into the six figures. Very easy here, especially in Southern California. And so, yeah, you're right. And I want to touch on something very quickly is you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
so I think those who are out there, there's all this artificial intelligence, there's all these apps, you name it. You can go in here and try to do DIY estate planning. What I say is, hey, save the DIY for the home improvement. Like if you want
Right.
to remodel your bathroom, paint your bathroom, DIY, sure, go down to the Home Depot and get some paint. Because if you mess it up, you can just call a contractor in to fix it. But
Right.
once you mess this up and somebody dies, it's too late,
Yeah.
and it's going to cost
It's
your
hard to come back
family
to that
a
money.
lot of money. A lot of money. Well, this will be we're going to kind of wrap this up, Ty. This has been some awesome information that you've shared today. Are there any well, let me ask you this. Well, how can someone get in contact with you if they want to utilize your services to sell their home that they just inherited?
Right. So the best way to get in contact with me is literally call, text. My phone number is 310-874-1354. Call or text is really the most straightforward way to get a hold of me. You can also email me, Tyler at acaciawestrarealty.com. And that's it. That's as straightforward as it gets.
Perfect. So, guys, reach out to Ty. I'll try to create a graphic here with her information so you'll be able to get a hold of her for all of your real estate needs. I'm pretty sure even if you didn't inherit a home, there's other ways that she can help you. I think if you're a full service, full scale real estate agency, you can do other things as well. So
Yeah.
maybe you didn't just inherit a home, but maybe you want to sell a home you currently have, right?
Right.
Please consider Ty for as a resource as well. So we're going to wrap up today. Hopefully, we gave you some insightful information. Once again, thank you for spending this time with us. And remember, don't go at it alone. There's professionals out here that are here to hold your hand and guide you through the process. For those who are looking to plan with a trust, like how do we get a trust in place? That's my area of expertise. Legacy One Law Firm, www.legacyonelaw.com. I'll put my contact information here. If you're watching this via social media platforms, you can just send me a direct message and we can schedule a free consultation to get that estate plan, that living trust started for your family as well. Thank you again. Enjoy your day.